Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Norma Hussey. I'm from Limerick on the west coast of Ireland. I give myself the term layperson since I'm neither a philosopher nor a mathematician. I'm not even an academic, although I have been a member of academia. So this is a paper on set theoretical ontology and the symbolic, inspired by my reading of ALAIN Badiou's works and by accounts of the extraordinary set theoretical activity being undertaken by Hugh Wooden and colleagues in the present moment. I think it is probably an impressionistic response to all of this. So it's my understanding that the hierarchical symbolization of tradition, which regulated human life for millennia, found its guarantee in the supposition, at the abstract level, that beyond the multiple, the one is, be it finite or an infinite one. It is a symbolic of finitude. The assumption of an infinite one does not yet break with the finite, because it is still hierarchically representable and it is deducible from the finite world. Modernity, in its break with tradition over the past few centuries, has revealed that being is essentially multiple. It has exposed the one as pure semblance and therefore ruined the supposition on which the hierarchical symbolic depends. The essence of modernity, for me, is the rejection of hierarchy and the consequent exposure of the being of the one as uncredible. But freedom from hierarchy without symbolic replacement produces a subjective crisis. Disorientation arises with the breakdown of formalization, that is, with the lack of a common understanding of the symbolic organization. And under the auspices of freedom, exploitation is rampant. It's no wonder then that the theme of the subject is a constant for modernity. The invention of a non-hierarchical symbolization requires the capacity to think multiplicity without the one. This involves the recognition of the logical existence of quantitatively distinct infinite multiples, by which the ruin of the being of the infinite one is achieved. Quantitative infinity is not deducible from finitude, but is authorized by the axioms of set theory. In fact, mathematical set theory, as an axiomatic system which delivers the transfinite multiple without implying the being of the one, suggests that the consistent organization of pure multiplicities in a logical framework is rationally thinkable. As such, it suggests that a non-hierarchical symbolization is possible. That is, a symbolic for modernity which receives its guarantee solely, but transparently, in its logical consistency. The premise here, then, is that the process for the abstract formulation of a non-hierarchical symbolic has already begun. It originated with the Cantorian inventions of set theory and quantitative infinity, but it is still undergoing development as the contemporary axiomatic system, called ZFC, is not yet stable or complete. The saga surrounding the development of set theory over the past 150 years or so, its splits, its advances, its dramatic crises, reflects the extreme difficulty of invention at the abstract level of a modern symbolic which is not in the least intuitive, as it depends on complex mathematical reasoning and innovation for the thinking and comparison of distinct quantitative infinities. Its development also seems to have mirrored the general underlying situation in the social and political world over the same period. The 9 axioms of ZFC were laboriously developed around the turn of the 20th century and tentatively concluded with Gödel's axiom of constructibility in the 1930s. But as a minimal statement about the universe of sets, Gödel's axiom was never fully embraced as a true axiom for set theory, and today must be rejected, not least because it cannot accommodate those large cardinals in the higher infinite which are now considered to be genuine. It seems to me that Gödel's constructible universe corresponds to a first attempt at a symbolic arrangement for the universe of the multiple. The basic axiom system itself has been in crisis since 1963, when Paul Cohen established that the ZF system could not determine the type of multiplicity of the continuum. Cohen showed that the most basic problem of set theory, that of Cantor's continuum hypothesis, was not solvable on the basis of the ZFC axioms. His method of forcing ushered in a new age of freedom from the restricted formalization assumed by the constructible universe. And in the immediate term, the focus was on the unquantifiable excess of the infinite power set itself, rather than on the implication of crisis for ZFC. The recognition of the exorbitant injustice implied by the seemingly total unmeasure of the state, that is the power set, with respect to the situation, seems to underlie the general dissatisfaction prevailing in the 1960s and 70s and articulated against the state, whether in the domain of mathematics itself or in the domains of art or love or politics. But today, it's a question of credibility with respect to the capacity of set theory to deliver the truth of the multiple. The intractability of the independence phenomenon due to Cohen's method of forcing, still unresolved more than 50 years later, challenges the foundational issues of truth in set theory itself and raises the question of whether the continuum hypothesis has a truth value at all. As such, two major contradictory orientations arise: the universe view, or Platonism, and the multiverse view, or pluralism, together with a third, which is the reactionary orientation of the skeptic. The universe view holds the conviction that there is a unique absolute background concept of set, realizable in the corresponding absolute set theoretic universe, in which every assertion has a definite truth value. Here, it is considered that the pervasive independence phenomenon is due to an insufficiency of the theory in finding the truth, rather than about truth itself. The opposing multiverse view considers that there are many distinct concepts of set, each realized in their corresponding universes, which in turn exhibit diverse truths. Its adherents argue that we may prefer some universes to others, and that there is no obligation to consider them all as somehow equal. Here, the continuum problem is already settled, having a different answer in different universes. And it's considered that the Platonists' dream solution of a new axiom for set theory by which the continuum hypothesis is decided is impossible. For Badiou, the current of thought corresponding to this vision is relativism. It ultimately amounts to an asymbolic vision and is the prevailing one today, so that disorientation reigns as we are cast adrift in an asymbolic world. The skeptic, viewing the entire concept of the universe of sets as a complete fiction, responds to the crisis of formalization with a rejection of infinity and proposes a return to finitude, or to a traditional symbolic. And the corresponding orientation is very obviously gaining traction in our world. Universists are broadly drawn from three camps, each pursuing a view of truth for set theory from different angles. One, from the doctrine of constructibility, originating in Gödel's constructible universe and pursuing today an inner model program for the incremental understanding of large cardinals. 2, from the doctrine of genericity, originating in Cohen's theory of generic extensions, and pursuing a forcing program for expanding the width of the universe of sets. And 3, from the doctrine of large cardinals, where the hierarchy of large cardinals, while unmoored from ZFC, is increasingly emerging as an intrinsic fundamental conception within set theory. As described in Being and Event, their corresponding 3 orientations in thought held mutually antagonistic positions after Cohen, especially with respect to the question of the state. But in recent times, perhaps, the universalists among them find more common cause in the recognition of their shared conviction of the possibility of an absolute modern symbolic whose truths are immutable, and they continue its pursuit, often even against reasonable expectation. Since the turn of the 21st century, adherents of the universe view have insisted on a rational discussion and investigation based on a contemporary assessment of the facts and developments in set theory to date, rather like Orestes in the Greek play by Aeschylus. They were encouraged by, among other things, the increasingly stable consequences of the large cardinal hierarchy, but the pursuits for a new axiom for set theory looked daunting or even hopeless. Then in 2010, the situation changed dramatically with the unexpected discovery within the Inner Model program that at a specific critical stage in the hierarchy of large cardinal axioms, there is a breakaway point, that at the level of one supercompact cardinal, the inner model construction must yield an enlargement which is compatible with all stronger large cardinal axioms. That is, it must yield an ultimate version of the inner model L. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I found this discovery really exciting when I came across it, and every new account only got better in the detail and implications, as well as in the overview. I find it highly significant that it's called the universality theorem, and actually I'm intrigued by the fact that the construction of a model to specifically generate target witnesses for a supercompact cardinal necessarily must generate, as a sort of byproduct, phantom witnesses for all large cardinals stronger in the hierarchy. But I'll get back to my broad brush overview. The entire framework for the Inner Model program was transformed from a program for the incremental understanding of large cardinals into a program for perhaps understanding V itself, where V is conventionally used to denote the universe of sets. A feverish investigation ensued, and it led to the isolation of a candidate for an axiom that V is an ultimate version of L. The various approaches to inner model theory had to be fundamentally altered to provide the solution, and altered in such a way that, perhaps incidentally, addressed the issues raised by Cohen's genericity and forcing. Hugh Wooden is now on the brink of demonstrating a transcendent version of Gödel's axiom of constructibility for the universe of sets. But where Gödel's axiom is minimal, Wooden's axiom is a maximal statement about the nature of the universe of sets. Everything now hinges on the fate of the ultimate L conjecture, an account of which, completely finished, thoroughly checked and circulated, is expected sometime this year. It's my understanding that the conjectured axiom, V equals ultimate L, recognizes all large cardinals, both known and those yet to be discovered, consistent with ZFC, but refuses an unfettered, incoherent prodigality of being. The impossibility heretofore of determining consistency in large cardinals is surpassed, so that an axiomatic realized in the ultimate L model transcends the fear of incoherence. In addition, the continuum hypothesis is decided. In fact, it holds, which runs counter to the intuitive expectations of notable Platonists, from Gödel to Wooden himself to ALAIN Badiou. For me, the significance here is that the normalization of the state, its minimum of excess, is accomplished in the context of an axiomatic capable of challenging the greater indeterminacy, which is that of consistency with respect to large cardinals. Wooden's axiom actually completely negates the ramifications of Cohen's method, which leads him to present a vista for set theory beyond the age of independence by forcing. It seems to me that forcing, that is the Cohen symptom of a sort of legal insubordination to formalization, which was effective and necessary to demonstrate the incompleteness of ZFC, becomes redundant when the formalization is sufficient. The axiom V equals ultimate L harnesses and combines the desires of the universe view in the three camps of the constructible inner model program, the generic doctrine, and the large cardinal doctrines. I find it significant that the procedure in developing this, so far conjectured result, used the resources of all three, but privileged none. For me, this demonstrates the many facets of the faithful subject, but also that in other domains, it might be time for those of a shared conviction, but opposing methods, to engage with each other's work. I noticed something of this nature recently in the debate entitled "What's to be Done?" between the communist ALAIN Badiou and the social democrat Marcel Gauchet. Above all, it demonstrates how the unexpected discovery can change everything. The conjectured axiom presents an unambiguous conception of the transfinite universe. It is maximal, it grounds a refutation of the skeptic, and banishes the spectre of undecidability on which relativism thrives. It resolves the crisis of formalization. It seems to me that there's a robustness about the pending solution for set theory, which holds promise for the realization of a credible, contemporary symbolic. As such, it proposes that there is a way out of disorientation without compromising on infinity and without yielding to the temptation of the one. Consequently, it inspires hope for a resolution of the subjective crisis which arises from our current deficit of symbolization. I see too much of the trauma of disorientation among families, which is my particular interest. Distraught youth and parents without anything affirmative, yet alone inspirational to propose. An epidemic of suicide and distress, and the growth industry of psychotherapies of all sorts, which do help people to cope, but without a full understanding of what's really going on. But if we can think the form of being of a non-hierarchical symbolic, maybe we can realize it. If we can overcome disorientation, maybe we can act. I'm not suggesting that an abstract formalization constitutes a concrete symbolic, but it does provide hope that such a symbolic, appropriate to modernity and multiplicity, is possible. And finally, I'd like to thank ALAIN Badiou for discovering and developing the means by which all of this can be illuminated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norma. I couldn't hear the words that were being announced, but I think they were telling the rest of the people here to leave the galleries. So don't worry if it comes, if it happens again. I think we just have to ignore it. It doesn't concern us.